Okay, welcome to those of you guys who are here live and those of you who are watching this recorded. We are going into week 3 of research writing, and we do have an awful lot to cover this week, so let us jump right in. Share my screen. And give it its time to do that so you can see everything. All right. Let's see here. Okay, as always, I want to start back here at the beginning so it looks the same or similar to you as it does to me. So I'm looking on the module. So once I've accessed the class, I've gone over here and clicked on modules. You may access it slightly differently, but you'll eventually end here at module 3 this week, right? And we'll just start with the module overview. So a couple things just as reminders. As always, this particular class is using APA format. So don't forget that as we're moving into some of the stuff that we're working on. But keep in mind that format isn't quite as important for things that are preparatory things such as observations or logs or brainstorming or questions that you're answering. Format isn't as important with APA for that particular thing, but you do want to be clear and concise. So if you're answering questions, it's always a good protocol to copy the question, include that, and then your answer. Most of the time you'll see in like the business world if that is occurring, or if you're looking at something that's like an FAQ, frequently asked questions online, you'll often see that the question is highlighted or bolded and then the answer, or they'll be different in some way. So it's clear for the reader to see which is the question and which is the answer. And that way they can read both if they choose to, or skip one if they want to. So just do look for ways that you can make it easier for your reader to purvey things. As you're looking at websites, and I know you guys look at a lot of those websites, you do the same thing too, right? You appreciate when there's less busyness, when it's a clean look, when it's easy to find stuff. So follow those same sort of practices for answering questions for assignments as well. Okay, so this is the week. You can see we have, we're working on project 3, and we'll kind of look at that. You'll be doing another journal. You'll be doing another discussion board. You'll be working on contacting the person you're going to interview and making that arrangement. And let's start. Okay, so the synthesis matrix, let's see if I can find that in an easier way here. There we go. Okay. Synthesis matrix sounds a little bit complicated, but it really isn't supposed to be that complicated. It's really supposed to help you organize your thoughts and be able for you to take the research that you're starting to collect and put it in a place that makes it easy for you to see with a really quick skimming glance what you have and what you still need. Okay. So this example that they've provided of a synthesis matrix. Now, synthesis just means taking a bunch of stuff together. There could be disparate, widely different things. Like, for example, if I look out the window right now, I'm in a neighborhood, and you can see lots of different styles of houses, lots of different colors of houses, lots of different people. And so I might want to synthesize the information that I see looking out the window by saying, okay, I have 5 brown houses and 2 blue houses, and 3 houses that have 2 stories and 1 house that has 1 story. I might want to try and put all that information together in some way that makes it easy to see. And that's what you're doing with research as well. So this example, and again, this is an example. Yours is going to look like this, but have different topic, right? So off here on this left side, okay, see where my cursor is looking at. These are all the sources. So source number 1, source number 2, source number 3, source number 4. So these are the sources that you're going to be collecting that are about the topic you're researching. Okay, so let's put it that way first. And as you collect them, you will take the information and input it here. So I go in and find something, and then I immediately come back over here and say, okay, this is source number 1. It's called Tropical Rainforest of the World. I assume I'm researching something having to do with that. And here's where I got it. Now, as I collect them, I just keep putting them here. Now, probably you'll look at this differently as you collect research. Some of you will find a source and immediately stop and read that thing. And some of you will find a whole bunch of sources, like you're in research mode, right? So you're like, I'm just going to find these sources and later I'm going to read them. So it kind of depends on your personality type, doesn't really matter. But as you sort of become more immersed in the research and you start to see things and see patterns, perhaps see things that you want to know, you're going to be then coming over here to this side. So notice across the top, there are some categories. Now, in order to put those categories there, you have to have some idea of what you're looking for, right? So some of yours might be the same, some might be different. So their categories are intro and background information. And I'm guessing that most of you will also have that category. So, because you probably do want some introduction and background information about whatever you're researching. So you might put that category here, right? And then as you read the sources listed here, if any of them do contain information that's useful in this category, then you want to sort of give yourself a quick summary of that. Yep, this is the information I found. It's in this location, maybe even a page number, okay? So notice I can see that the top 2 sources do have introduction and background information that might be useful to my paper. These sources here don't, because I can see there's blanks. This source again does. So what I'm doing is trying to see where the information is located in my sources and where I'm still missing information. Okay, so notice in order to do that, I have to have some categories in my head about what I need, right? So this particular person who is studying tropical research, rainforests, wants intro and background information, livelihood of the people who live there, medicinal plants, protection against erosion, and beneficial effect on climate. So you can kind of see where this could be complicated, right? So like as I start to research, I might think I need to know these things. But then as I begin to research, I might realize, oh, there's this other category. I should look at that too. So I may be needing to add categories here. Or even I might decide, oh, erosion, maybe that's not as important. I'm going to eliminate that category. Okay, maybe I can see I don't have enough information in what, right? So some of these, you can see that like this particular source, these two sources are really only good for background and information, right? They don't provide any of this other stuff. This source is really great for all this stuff, but not background. So this matrix is just intended for you to organize your research in an organized fashion so that you can see what categories you have. And this is a template, so you can download this template and then use it your own way. This particular person uses 8, right? 8 categories on here. Yours will be however many you need. Now, you're going to be reflecting on your discourse community, of course, and you'll include a paragraph, notice this, of at least 250 words that explains what you learned about how your sources relate to each other or diverge from each other. So you can look at this synthesis matrix and go, these are how my sources are alike. These are how they're different. This is what I'm getting from that. This is how I'm going to use it. Okay. So that's the point of that particular part. Let's go back over here to. So that's where I am here. I'm still in module 3, and I've just opened the synthesis matrix to help you take a look at it. Okay, so that's the very first thing we encounter. Now, let's move forward here. As we move forward, actually, let me think about this for just a second, because although I appreciate the fact that they have started you this way. I'm going to back up here if I can find, let's see here, module 2, project 2. So we can open that back up again to remind you what it is, right? Because at this point you may be like, what does this pertain to? I forget. All right, so let's open that back up again. I know we looked at this last week, but just to remind you in case, life happened in the middle of everything that you were doing and you went, I don't know what we're talking about anymore. Project 2 is what you're working on. So again, we're still thinking about ethnography and studying your discourse community. So you're again observing a digital community, writing a 4 to 5 page argumentative essay about this online discourse community. Your observations focusing on some sort of social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you wish. You're collecting qualitative, so what's the quality of the information, quantitative, how much, about how people use this whatever social media it is, and then writing this essay about like this. What is this thing? Why did they use it? What's the point of it? What do I get out of it? Again, you're going to not only do your observation, which is primary research, but you'll also be going out to finding secondary research, which is stuff that other people have observed and written about it. Okay, so that's kind of where you're going with this. You're going to be doing what we call a review of the literature, and that means that you're going to find sources and review them for us. Don't make it any harder than it is. You're finding the sources, you're reading them, and then telling us this is what's in these sources and this is why they're useful. Okay, so again, you're participating in a conversation about the topic, right? So you're going to include at least 3 scholarly sources. Those are the ones we talked about last week that are sometimes called peer-reviewed stuff, but something that's scholarly, that's been that's gone through channels of people that have looked at it and said, okay, I'm a peer of this particular doctoral person, and they've done this research and it's valuable because of this, and so now we consider it scholarly. But you're also going to be looking at not only peer-reviewed and scholarly stuff, but also other things that you might more readily read or look at that have to do with your source too. So other types of sources. So let's keep that up for a minute in case we need to refer back to it. Okay, so now backing up, we want to take a look at one of the things that you're going to be doing with this primary research stuff is a collection or an interview of a person. That's another way of doing what we call primary research. So an observing is one way of doing primary research. I'm observing, I'm looking at something. The other way is to find a person that's connected to the thing and interview that person. So one of the things they give you here is the Oral History Association webpage. So I want to pause at this moment, and can I show you this video that talks you through what is an oral history and what does it matter? Now, depends on what your age is probably, but if you are older, then you probably do already do some of this, right? We're used to, I'm older, so we are used to talking about our long history, our long lives, right? Well, when I used to as a kid, right, I used to do this. And of course, inside, by the way, we still feel like we're 16. And so this feels really weird for us to look back and go, oh my goodness, we've done that for 50 years. How can that possibly be the case? This oral history, we may be the only keepers of certain memories at this point in time. Now, and when you get to 70 or 80 or 90, that's even more so, right? So some of these people may be the only people that remember certain things, right? So the Oral History Project is important to collect those memories. So let's take a look at this. There's the Oral History Association is actually an association in the world that collects stories, and let's take a look at what they do. Let's make it a little louder for you. Give me a second here.
First off, I want to spit 17 seconds in, now on Tony's slides. Thank you. Bottom. There we go. Thank you to the people in the back for helping with technology. Thanks to all the students involved in TEDx. Great. Thanks to Tony for setting the bar high. My mentor at Iowa State University, Ron Hasselbuehler, started many a formal presentation with warnings and disclaimers. So I got a couple warnings and a couple disclaimers. Warnings first, there will be pop culture references, most very esoteric. The second warning is there will be name dropping, such as Ron Hasselbuehler. The disclaimers, a lot of what you will hear me say, I've said before, a lot of it in the Wisconsin Humanities Council's blog, Humanities.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we don't care about some of that stuff. There we go.
I'm going to talk about what is oral history first. And to do that, I want to talk about my first formal oral history presentation. It was the fall of 1999, and it was in Moscow, Idaho. So I was the state oral historian for the Idaho State Historical Society. My official job title, no kidding, was historian, oral. Awesome. So I was asked by professor of history at the University of Idaho, Kathy Aiken, if I would travel over from Boise to Moscow to talk to her graduate students. So I did, and I was nervous. I brought 3x5 cards, so before PowerPoint slides, kids, there were 3x5 cards. I brought 3x5 cards. As I started speaking, between the tension in my arm and the sweat, I basically melted through them. I was speaking in a work permit account that rivaled the 1980s spokesperson for Federal Express commercials. If you don't know who that is, YouTube that. About a minute in, a student had his hand up. I thought I'd engage someone to a point where they had a question. So I looked at him, and I said, yeah, you have a question. He had two, actually. Who are you, and what are you doing here? So I thought about that over 18 years now, and at its core, I think what he was asking really was, what is oral history, and why does it matter? So that's what I'm going to talk about today. This is not a picture of Idaho. This is a picture of a small town in Idaho, Marco, Idaho, where my grandparents spent most of their life. And my parents went to school and met. Okay, so what is oral history? There are dozens and dozens of written publications. There's great online resources, like from my colleagues at the Baylor University Institute for Oral History. We didn't meet in basketball this year, but we meet every other time, so that's been awesome. Go Badgers. And the Oral History Association, the OHA, who have the perfectly named URL, easy to remember, oralhistory.org.
Remember that OHA, we won't be watching this in video, just a little bit to show you a little bit, but do you remember OHA?
But since I'm here, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think what oral history is. And I'm going to start with these 3 bullet points. This is a slide brought to you by the letter C and the number 3. Watching Sesame Street, get that reference. This is also Crazy Legs. A lot of people think that Crazy Legs is just a race that we run in the spring. Crazy Legs is an actual person. No way. So let's talk a little bit about collecting. So just a couple of things about collecting on the idea of what is oral history. So collecting, to collect oral history, you need to be a well-trained, well-prepared interviewer. You need to do research to be able to ask good, specific, open-ended questions of the people you're interviewing, or the topic that you're interviewing. You want to record it, either using a digital audio or a digital audio or video recorder. I annoy my friends by saying it, audio video.
I'm going to pause that again because he's correct that to be an oral historian, you have to be well trained. the way you get well trained is by trying and doing it and getting better at it, which is where you guys are. In this particular class, you're going to be not probably well trained, although getting that training for doing this. You are also going to be recording and collecting.
Video, but a noted videographer told me once, Troy, any good video is about 90% audio. I continue to record. So on the guides of curating, once you have this digital file, whether it be audio or audio, you want to make sure that you put it in as many places as possible. The acronym we like to use is LOCKSS, LOCKSS, stands for lots of copies and keys. Once you have those digital files, you also want to create some sort of data, metadata, or a finding aid to help unlock those digital files for either you if you're doing the interviews or future generations if you donate these. And whether you're doing one oral history or an oral history project, you should communicate about it in some way. You should celebrate. You can do that in formal ways, such as a book or a journal article or a museum exhibit. You can do it in more modern ways, like a podcast.
Or, as in our case, you're going to be communicating it as part of this particular course. I will provide this link for you if you want to watch the rest of that at your leisure. It's a little bit better on small screen than it might be on a big one. So I just want to show you a little bit of it. The OHA, keep that one in mind, right? Let's move this one down up here. The next thing that you'll encounter, is the web link to the StoryCorps itself. Okay, so if you click on that one, you're going to get StoryCorps. Now, StoryCorps is really cooler because StoryCorps is where you can actually see where these collections of stories, of histories go. And then you can go through and click on them as you see something that you find interesting. This particular month is March is usually Women's History Month, so you can see that they are focusing on women. But you can go back to various other places if that isn't something that grabs your attention. Maybe you want to see other themes. There's the Military Voices Initiative down here at the bottom. There's the mobile tour. StoryCorps, you can see, goes around the country and collects stories from all over the place. There's one small step, and that's one that's big right now because it's political divides. And right now we have that going on, of course, because of the elections. We have Brightness in Black, that is sharing bold and Black stories. So there's all kinds of different ways you can take a look at this. I'm going to come back to this one in a minute, but I'm following the order in which you encounter them. So let's come back to that in a minute. Now, you may be feeling a little overwhelmed right at this moment because you're thinking, wait a minute, I have to do this? I've never interviewed anyone. I don't know how to interview anyone. What do I do? So the next thing they give you is an OWL link. Purdue OWL stands for Online Writing Lab. And again, this we use, even though we're not Purdue, we use that for all kinds of stuff. Most universities do. Purdue got an enormous grant for putting this together, and one of the things they made clear as a promise that was that every other university would be able to use it. So interviewing, there's lots of different types of interview, and you might be right now thinking of one particular type that you have encountered in the past. But the most common one you might be thinking about is a face-to-face interview. And that's when you actually sit down across from somebody and you talk this through, whatever the topic is. Maybe it's somebody in your family that you're asking questions about your genealogy. Maybe it's a military person where you're asking about their service. Could be anybody, right? In your case, maybe you decided you wanted to figure out, why do people use Facebook anyway? I'm gonna study Facebook, and I'm gonna interview someone who uses Facebook. I mean, I'm just speculating here, right? So this might be the way that you might encounter an interview. Might be face-to-face. Another one is a phone interview. That's also possible. Or an email interview. This one isn't as personal, but of course it's more convenient time-wise. Keep in mind that's a little harder that some of these, so the ones that are email might be harder to control time-wise, because if you have a person in front of you, you can say, I have half an hour to interview and let's get this thing done and then I'm done. Where an email, you don't know when they're going to respond to you, and if you have questions, then it might take another period of time, so that can be a little longer. But those are options. Setting up an interview. So this is an interview. It's not a resume interview where you're trying to get a job, although I have had students actually get jobs based on this interview, because it's wide-ranging. It can be wide-ranging. So you always want to be professional, right? You always want to be professional when you're asking this question. Ask the person, tell them who you are, tell them why you're doing what you're doing, that it's for a class, that it's a project. And some people are going to say no. That's okay. Don't worry about it. If you don't ask, you can't get a yes, right? What kinds of things do you want to be prepared for? The big one is being prepared for your interview. Before, let's say you get a person, you ask them, they say yes, they say, I'll do it on such and such a day, at such and such a time, in such and such a manner. Then you have to do a little preparation, like what kinds of questions? You want to have a list of questions going into an interview, right? What is, who are you? What do you do? How do you encounter this subject that we're talking about? These are some other things that they give you to give you some help, right? Do bring recording equipment. Now, your recording equipment for you. So if you were doing an official OHA thing, you would bring in, big recording equipment and multiple versions of it, and it'd be highly technical. You and I are just going to use our cell phone for the most part, and that's okay. So if you have a cell phone or an iPhone or an Android phone, we do provide you with lots of different apps or ways in which you can record someone. You do want to record it because you are going to submit the recording to me, so make sure that you do take a look at that before you set that interview up, before you're ready, okay? This link right here, I'm going to click on this link. Creating good interview and survey questions. Questions you want to avoid. The big one that we want to avoid right off the top are any questions that can be answered by a yes or a no, right? You never want to ask a question that can be answered by a yes or a no, because that doesn't give you very much information, does it? So you also want to avoid a bias question. An example of that, don't you agree that campus parking is a problem? Well, that assumes that it is a problem and that your person is already on your page. That may not necessarily be fair. A revised question would be, is parking around campus a problem? That gives them the opportunity to answer the way they already are thinking about the issue. Questions that assume something. Again, an example here is, there are many people who believe that campus parking is a problem. Are you one of them? That you're leading them, right? You're telling them something before asking them something. Your question is you're trying to just get their opinion. You're not trying to tell them your opinion. You're not trying to change their opinion. You're just trying to get what they think, right? So another example of question you want to avoid is something confusing, or a question with multiple different parts. So maybe a question that has multiple questions, like this example here, which I won't even read because you can see that it's very long. Make your questions concise and simple so that they can respond, right? Okay, so let's get rid of that one. There are some other things that they give you, and that's the one we just took a look at. All these links are here, and you can take a look at them yourself. Okay. Now, once you have gotten the information and you've asked the questions and you have collected the answers, Then there's this thing called a synthesis matrix. Let's take a look at that. Remember we talked about synthesis matrix, so it's not, you're not trying to be crazy complicated, right? A matrix is just a visual way of seeing something that's a lot of information in a concise way. So here we go. Here's another example of a matrix. This one uses the topic of women in World War II. And again, over on this side, let's go down here. We have this one lists sources on the top. So we have sources 1, source 2, source 3, source 4. That's the opposite of the other matrix I showed you, but doesn't matter because it's just a method, right? And over here, the subtopics that we are trying to collect information about: alteration of women's roles because of World War II, hardships and oppositions women faced. So again, you can collect your information in any way that you want to, but you're going to, in some manner, collect your information so that we can see what it is that you did. And they're giving you a lot of information. I did warn you that this week was a lot, right? So this week is sort of that in-between week. Like some weeks you have a lot of things that you're turning in that are final versions of something. Some weeks are weeks in which you're collecting information, putting it together, trying to organize it. So this is another bit where you're trying to learn more about what is a primary research, what am I doing, what's an observation, what's an interview, what's it look like. This article will tell you a little bit more about what that means. Okay, so I'm again not going to read that, because you can do that yourself. Now, when you do your interview of the person, you do want to have a consent form. I warned you about that ahead of time. When you turn this in, eventually it's going to look like this. Okay. You can send this to them via webmail if you want to. You can print it out and hand it to them. But again, this is the information you're going to need: their name, your name, a phone number. Basically, this is just telling them that you are doing this as an official version for this particular class. You're collecting the information for the use only of this class. You're not intending to use it for research purposes like the OHA. The OHA would have a different form altogether because they would be collecting and keeping it forever. You're just doing it for the purpose of this. So you can fill this information out and you'll turn that in also. Okay, going back over here to the project 2, which is where we're still kind of moving forward, right? This, you're observing, you're collecting, you're researching, you're doing primary and secondary, you're interviewing. There's a lot of stuff happening here, right? Don't feel well, you will feel overwhelmed, I'm sure, because there's a lot here to do. So the first thing that you actually have to turn in this week, let's take a look at that. Of course, it's usually the discussion board. So the discussion board has 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, write a short description of your discourse community. Who are they? What is it? What is this thing you're looking at? Who do you plan to interview? Okay, you don't have to mention their names, but tell us who they are. My person is a nurse, my person is a teacher, my person is my grandmother, and your research question, which is at this point, after you have observed things, you probably had some questions, right? Like, why are they doing this? Or why are they doing that? Or why do they argue so much? Or whatever your question was that you're trying to delve into, that's the research question. Okay, so what is the discourse community? Who is this person that you plan to interview? And what is the question that you're going to interview them about? And then the second part of that is 5 potential interview questions you plan to ask. So remember, you're going to be doing a 30-minute interview. So you probably want to ask somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 questions that you will talk about, right? So that means, again, you can't ask questions that are yes or no questions, or the 5 or 6 questions will be done in 5 or 6 minutes, and you'll be like, well, what do I do now? I always plan somewhere in the range of 15 questions, just so I have backup questions, so that I feel like if some of those questions go really quickly, then I have a couple more questions that I can look at. So plan ahead. But again, this is what you're going to be doing. 2 parts to the discussion board post number 3. And then, of course, the second part of that is after you post it, then you will reply to your peers. And again, I suggest replying to your peers on Friday or Saturday, not waiting till Sunday afternoon, because again, then the idea here is that you can see the questions that they plan to ask, give them suggestions about maybe more questions they might ask, or tweaking their questions so that they're better. And sometimes you'll look at their questions and go, that is a really great question. I'm going to ask that question too. So that gives you the option of changing and editing your own questions. Okay, so I see that several of you are already participating in that, and feel free to peruse those. Now, Journal 5 is going back to that oral history association. So we're going to delve back into that in a minute here. But this one asks you to use that oral history story length, choose one of those oral histories to view or listen to, and then answer the question. So you're going to go back over to this one, okay, the oral history link, and you're going to pick one of these things, and you're going to listen to it and go, oh, I'm going to listen to this one. We are going to pick one and listen to it just for fun. This is a 3-minute one. You can see what it's like.
In this story, how baseball brought 2 strangers together and turned them into family.
Oh.
In this story, how baseball brought 2 strangers together and turned them into family. Ed Hawley first met Kennard Lewis in 2010. Ed was coaching youth baseball in New York City, and 14-year-old Kennard was one of his players.
When I met you, I was like, this kid is humongous. You were probably like 5'10", and your feet were gigantic. That's the thing that always made me smile. I was like, dang, he can't run. He's got to pick up one of them feet.
Yeah, I wasn't fast.
You were just growing into your body, and you used to stutter.
I did, but baseball allowed me to not get bullied as much because I had some talent. And then you decided to share that you were also bullied. Now it didn't just become somebody talking at you, acting like they know. Now you knew.
It was more than just hitting and catching and throwing. When I was teaching you about life, when do you think that I went from just being your baseball coach to being like family?
That day I got off the train. I was literally 2 blocks away from my school when my mom called and said, I'm in a hospital.
I've been in your life for a few years, and because she had the health scare, she wanted to make sure that somebody was going to be around to look out for her son. And I vaguely remember signing this paperwork.
She made it like legal.
Yeah, like suddenly I was legally responsible for you. I mean, just to be honest, it was something that I didn't think I was ready for. But you know what? It was you. And I felt protected of you. I just tried to help her because she did a great job of raising you. I think I also reminded you a lot of times when you're mad, hey, you only got one mom, bro.
I think you continue to do a solid job. I think it just must have been crazy to see me at 14 and then now at 27.
I see my boy going out there, reaching out to try to help humanity. I can say that not only did I make some young men's lives better, but they in turn have made other people's lives better. And I couldn't be prouder.
Okay, so you can see the oral history story stuff I just played this one right here. That's right up top and so was suggested to me. You can go down and click on any one you want. You can see that they all have different times. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. There's one about NASA. There's one about, all kinds of different stuff. So take a look at the oral history stuff for journal number 5. And you'll answer some questions. Was it audio? Was it video? There's both. So pick one that you like better and you reflect on that. This will also give you some examples of perhaps what kinds of questions you might ask, right? So this is, again, kind of trying to help you think through, what do I do with this interview? Perhaps, we do not anticipate that you are professional interviewers in any way, shape, or form. We're helping you to delve into this area of study. Okay, and then the Tech Live reflection, which of course you're going to do after this. Okay, again, so that is where we are for this particular week. It's a lot of stuff to think through, but keep in mind that you're in this sort of messy part of the research where you're planning your thoughts. You aren't necessarily doing the interview, but you are connecting with the person. You're making the plan for the interview. You're thinking ahead to what I'm going to be doing in module 4, which will be next week. Okay. So if you're looking through the module 3, the overview, we've got the reading and resources stuff on the top part. We've got the activities and assessments down on the bottom. So there's 3 things you'll turn in. You've got the discussion board and the replies. We've got the journal 5, which is the oral history stuff. And then we've got the Tech Live reflection. But in order to do these things, right, you have to have done some work. So like for the discussion board post, in order to post it by the middle of the week, you have to have connected with a person, made a plan, started to organize your thoughts on how you're going to interview that person and when it's going to happen. So, right, so you do need to start as soon as possible to make this happen. Okay, now, anybody here have a question? You don't have to have questions, but you can if you want to. If not, I am going to let you go at this point in time. So I will still be here in case somebody else pops in or pops out. But as far as my lecture part, we're done.